Hello, everyone. So today we are going to talk about Ayurveda and the menstrual cycle, and we're going to go into detail about some menstrual cycle imbalances and how we can help to bring our body back into balance when we're experiencing symptoms. So here we go. So this is a chart of all of the different processes we have going on throughout the month, all at the same time. So we have the pituitary sending signals to the ovaries to grow a follicle, to release different hormones, to communicate with the uterus to either grow a lining or shed a lining. We have temperature fluctuations. We have many different hormones being released. There's a lot going on, and it's all going on throughout the whole month. There are so many shifts taking place. We can see all of these humps and these spikes and all of this happening. So we can see how sometimes it's a little bit hard to maintain balance throughout this ever-shifting cycle. Ayurveda kind of gives us a glimpse into what each of these cycles, these phases of the cycle, are doing, what their purpose is, and how we can facilitate and support them. So here during this follicular phase, which is right at the end of menses up until ovulation, the pituitary gland is sending follicle stimulating hormone to the ovary to tell the ovary, let's grow an egg, let's grow an ovum. So it starts nourishing that follicle. So this phase is governed by Kapha dosha, which is earth and water. And earth and water are nourishing. They provide support, nutrients, and growth for something to grow in. So we can see that energy being put into this, growing this follicle. And we also see it when the uterine lining starts to build up. So it is growing that uterine lining. So the qualities of Kapha dosha are very present during this time. So there's heavy, cold, oily, slow, sticky, stable, and soft. That slow, sticky, and stable helps to build those tissues and grow that follicle. Kapha governs the structure, lubrication, and cohesion. So it is bringing together nutrients to help build. That's the structure and the cohesion and nourish and the lubrication. They're all coming together during this phase to grow that ovum and that uterine lining. The ovulation phase through the luteal phase is governed by Pitta dosha. So Pitta is fire and water, and Pitta governs digestion, metabolism, and transformation. So at ovulation, we are moving and shifting from this follicle that is growing and being nourished to a transformation. It is now an ovum. It is released from the ovary. It is on its journey to the uterus. So we see that transformation of going from a follicle to an ovum. We also have a temperature spike. So we heat up. We have that fire that kind of shoots up during this phase, and we can feel that. And that our temperature stays raised up until just before menstruation. So this whole phase, we have a higher temperature. So we can see that fire element, that hot, that heat. Now we're also releasing progesterone during this time. And progesterone helps to create a comforting environment for the ovum. We might experience more hunger because we're also thickening that lining and building more tissue. So just before menstruation, that temperature drops, the hormones start to drop, and we're moving into Vata dosha. And Vata dosha is space and air. So Vata dosha really governs movement, communication, and transportation. And during this phase, it's really transporting and moving the uterine lining that we do not need because, if fertilization did not take place, all of it is moved out of the body. We can experience a lot of those qualities of Vata dosha during this phase too, which is, light, dry, cold, and moving. we experience, a lot of movement during that phase. All right. So, according to Ayurveda, the menstrual cycle is a cleansing and rejuvenation process for our physiology. And this helps to give us insight into our overall health and well-being. If we're experiencing symptoms, then we can expect an imbalance there. We can gauge the imbalance based on the symptoms that we're experiencing. So each of those doshas have a specific kind of energy, right? There's heat. In Pitta, there is a heavy and stable energy. In Kapha, we might feel colder and, not be able to sleep as well, have that lightness, have a light sleep during our menstruation. With that vata energy. So if we have an excess of these, we can usually feel that. Like some women feel burning sensations during that pitta phase, anger, irritability, all of that is like excess fire. So we can start to gauge our imbalance based off of these qualities that are present during each phase of the cycle. All right, so yes, like I said, when we experience symptoms, it's our body's way of telling us, hey, something's not right. An imbalance is caused by the doshas becoming aggravated, accumulated, or moving out of their place. So they each govern specific areas of the body and specific areas of specific parts of the menstrual cycle. If we are experiencing, that movement during a different part, for example, if we have bleeding in the middle of our cycle, that's a sign of an imbalance in vata because, it's not supposed to be moving out yet. And it could be a sign of pitta too, like excess bleeding. So each of the doshas has symptoms that align with their qualities. And we can kind of gauge that by the symptoms we're experiencing. So vatas tend to experience mood swings, that moods all over the place like the wind. We're kind of feeling one way 1 minute and another way the next. Insomnia, that light sleeping, the inability to just settle down, maybe feeling a little all over the place. Irregular cycles, maybe prolonged cycles, skipped cycles, absent or stopped cycles. Endometriosis and painful menstruation as well, because that dryness of vata can create a lot of rough pain in the menstrual cycle. Some things that we can do to counter the vata imbalance would be things like oil massages, because vata is so light and dry. Oil really helps ground, soothe, and calm vata. We want to stick to warm, oily, and heavy, well-cooked foods like, sweet potatoes with some ghee or butter, things like that. And we want to favor the sweet, salty, and sour tastes. So the tastes have the ability to heal and to trigger certain responses and functions in the body. And when we have a vata imbalance, these tastes, the sweet, salty, and sour, trigger specific functions in the body that help balance vata. And vatas tend to be all over the place, and so they really need to take time to rest, to find peace and calm. Meditation is another great way to counter vata imbalance. Rest. Kapha imbalance. So kapha has that heavy quality. So they have the sadness and the depression. They just have a heavy heart. That can be a sign of imbalance. Cysts, where there's like that excess heavy tissue and fluid retention, weight gain, more of that heaviness, yeast infections, and stiffness. So that earthy energy can kind of give a stiffness when there's too much of it. And lethargy, so just foggy and tired all the time. Some of the things that we can do when we're experiencing a kapha imbalance is dry brushing to help remove some of that excess earthy oil from the skin. You want to focus on warm, light, and well-cooked foods. Favor pungent, bitter, and astringent. So pungent, bitter, and astringent help to clear. They help to reduce that water in the body. The astringent kind of removes excess fluid from the body. And make sure to have a light dinner. A lot of people, eating heavy meals before bed can really create some heaviness in the morning, because our body, it doesn't digest after a certain point. It focuses on our sleep schedule. So we want to make sure that we don't eat after 6 or 7 p.m. and that we have a light dinner. And then more movement and exercise. When we get sad and stuck and heavy, moving some of that out can be really beneficial to kind of perk back up and remove some of that heaviness. So some pitta imbalances can be anger and irritability, heavy bleeding, increased frequency. So we can have 2-week periods or really excessive bleeding. There can also be burning sensations in the bladder or uterus, hot flashes, sweating, diarrhea, and headaches specifically. Some things that we can do to help counter some pitta imbalances are to bring in some cooling, sweet, bitter, and astringent foods. So these have more cooling properties. They also help to nourish. That sweet taste really nourishes and builds tissue, especially during that premenstrual phase where we're kind of building more of that tissue. And then eat regular meals on time. Pittas tend to get hangry, and they are unable to skip a meal without getting irritable and angry. So making sure that we eat on time in every meal can be really helpful for pitta imbalances. Stay cool physically and emotionally. Swimming in water is really great for pittas as an exercise activity, and it's cooling. Stay hydrated, drinking lots and lots of water. All that heat can kind of burn away sometimes some of the moisture when it's in excess. So really staying hydrated. And then working in some downtime. Pittas can also be very goal-oriented and go as well. So it's really important that they kind of take some time to calm and cool down. So I want to point out that our body has a natural ability to heal. Healing is innate within us. It is not something that we have to do, but something we have to allow without interference. So a lot of our imbalances come from behaviors or foods or things that just don't align with our body type. And they're interfering with our overall health and well-being. And if we can remove those and switch them out for things that align with our body, that nourish our body, then it can awaken a healing within us that is so profound. Once we allow this healing through proper diet, routine, self-care practices, and practices to support and promote that inner healing within us. And this is going to look different for every person. We all have different body types, different constitutions, and we must learn to refer to our own inner intelligence. Our body knows what it needs. If you eat something spicy and you get heartburn, that is it saying, no, I don't like that. So listening to our body and our own inner wisdom is number one for finding healing and balance within our lives. I hope you enjoyed this little snippet about Ayurveda and the menstrual cycle, and I look forward to hearing what you thought about it. Thank you.